College football nerds here talking Ohio State and Maryland. And y'all probably didn't think that we would do this game because we generally don't do games where, the spread is high or we might pick a large margin. But there's some interest with Maryland coming into this game, and Ohio State did give up some points to Rutgers. So we want to talk about it. We want to model it and have a little quick discussion. It's not going to be a normal just talking and jabbering on. It's going to be pretty quick if I can get through this intro. So I want to remind y'all, as I do every week, please like and subscribe. If you want to post about us on 11 Warriors, we're not going to be mad about that either. Or Ohio State Rival Site, we actually have an account there, so we can mix up with y'all there as well. Josh, we've had a discussion before this, kind of talking about what we saw in these games over the weekend, and we're going to get into that a little bit. But before we do, I want to set the stage. Usually we wait a little bit to get into the model. I want to set the stage with the model for this and kind of pivot and talk off of that for our quick hitter discussion here. So why don't you take it away?
The model in this game, short and sweet, it predicts Ohio State to win 51-28. Our model is basing that score off really how potent the offenses are relative to the opposing defenses. And I want to make clear, the defensive numbers for neither team are good. Ohio State is allowing 100% of opponent rushing averages, 117% of opponent passing averages. I think Ohio State fans know the defense has not been great, but it's important to recognize with the teams you've played, Nebraska, Penn State, and even Rutgers have not been world beaters in the other games they've played. So the numbers you've been putting out, allowing teams to have 4 yards per carry, 6.8 yards per attempt, are great in theory, but you've played teams that average less than 6 yards per pass attempt on the season. Maryland's numbers are similarly bad. They are a worse run defense. 116% of opponent averages is really pretty putrid against the run. So I think Ohio State is going to be able to have their way in this game because they're going to be able to run it whenever they want. And they're allowing right at opponent averages passing. The key here, in terms of scores, we talk about stall points and break points. The model is based around the idea that football is not like a point per yard game. Teams have certain thresholds they need to hit for the offense to be effective, certain other thresholds for them to be super effective. And Ohio State is expected to get outgained per play here, 7.9 yards per play to 8.2. If you want to break it down, the basic concept is efficiency. Ohio State's offense is expected to be able to really sustain drives whenever they want to, and Maryland is not. Maryland gets their yardage in chunks, which can be really good for scoring, up to a point that'll let you to score points even against a good defense. But if you don't have high efficiency numbers, you can't sustain drives consistently enough to not have to punt a good number of times. And that's how the model is getting to 51-28.
And I'm not going to say that these numbers are out of whack with what I was thinking. You got Justin Fields on one side of the ball that's super efficient. And then you've got Taulia on the other side that's put up some numbers lately. The Northwestern game scares me a little bit if I'm thinking about projecting them offensively against a team like Ohio State. That's concerning a little bit. We saw Penn State last year struggle with Minnesota with a similar type of offense conceptually. I'm going to go ahead and talk about my prediction because I think, again, getting some of this out of the way can lead to some more interesting discussion. I had some concerns, yes. We saw points late from Rutgers, and I had some concerns when I first thought about the score, but then when I went back and thought about it a little more, I'm like, what is this? This is Alabama every year when their subs give up a bunch of points late in the game. And then the fans are mad, but it gives the coaches something to coach about. And so that's kind of what we had here, where if people just saw the box score, just saw the final score line, they're going to be like, okay, well, crap, Ohio State's defense isn't very good. They're not going to realize that it was like, I think you said like 41-9 or something in the fourth quarter. And then the scrubs kind of gave up, or the backups gave up some points. I think this game's going to go similarly. And I'm going to give when the starters are still in the game score and then a final score. Final score, I think 52-28. Like, I think the model's right there. I think Maryland's going to get some points. But I think most of those points are going to come against the backups. So give me a final score 52-28. Give me a mid-third quarter score of 40 1-14.
And that's pretty well in line with what I'm thinking. I think in the third quarter, this game's going to be about 42-10, and the final score will end up, I'll say 52-24. So 42-10 and 52-24. Here's my takeaway from the Penn State Maryland game. Taulia was very effective in that game. He's gotten more comfortable in the offense. He's running it more efficiently. But, and it's a big but, Penn State has had some really weird issues with the RPO. We saw this last year with Minnesota. We commented on that game. It was really strange that they were getting kind of lit up by the same RPO scheme that they like to run. And the same thing happened here. Penn State, their linebackers didn't sink enough in coverage a couple times, and they ended up with man-on-man against an outside receiver, the 75-yard touchdown in particular, or I guess 62 yards, where Raheem Jarrett kind of crosses on a deep post, but I think it's a post, hits him 30 yards downfield. Really good throw, and Taulia can make any throw. He's just not necessarily consistent. And the biggest point there is the Penn State corner couldn't stay with him. And because you had a 5-star receiver, you had a high 4-star quarterback making a throw that Penn State just wasn't equipped to cover because the corner was too slow, frankly, and he runs around the defense. But if you take away two of those big shots in that game, yeah, and those big shots are important, but Taulia was about 7.5 yards per attempt, 7.5 yards per attempt, and 24 throws, and then they had 2 throws for over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. So if you're Ohio State, the key is it's not just not screwing up your scheme. It's also, are your athletes fast enough to not get burned on these RPO plays? And I think the answer is that they are. And when the starters are in the game, they're athletic enough to not get beat over the top by Maryland. Loxley's offense at Maryland consistently will shut down if you're able to slow down or stop that RPO scheme. 2018 Alabama Clemson was sort of the big example of it, but Georgia did it a couple times as well, where they got into those games, they try to go RPO, and like if you can play press man, and the big thing is if you can play press man, you can sink your linebackers real deep to take away that slant RPO throw, and you can do that without getting gouged by the run. He really has no plan B in his scheme. It doesn't really repeatedly, we saw this in the opener with Northwestern, it can just totally fold. Penn State couldn't do that or couldn't do it consistently. They started sinking, but then kind of got gouged by the run a good bit over the course of the game, which is the flip side to it. I think Ohio State is going to be able to man up on the receivers, at the very least not get torched the way Penn State did, even if they catch a pass, but probably also can clog the lanes. And that's going to continue up until the backups come in, and then the lack of technique and jamming and the lack of awareness from the linebackers is going to show up in pass defense, and you'll give up some points. That's my general prediction in the game.
And I don't want to take away from Maryland. The Maryland fans who've never heard us cover one of their games before are probably like, "Who are these jokers that are bashing our team?" I want Maryland fans to kind of know, like, we don't do that. Like we're not here to bash your team. We have seen enough of elite teams and how they handle their business, and we're putting Ohio State in that category, that when we're talking about these point spreads and our predictions, this is more good about Ohio State than us saying anything bad about Maryland. I think Maryland is showing that they are legit, or they're becoming legit. Probably the best. I mean, it's the best quarterback wide receiver combo that Ohio State's seen this year. Wouldn't you agree, Josh?
Yeah, well, honestly, would you agree with this? I think outside of Ohio State themselves, I don't know that any other, maybe Minnesota's Bateman, maybe their quarterback combo with Bateman is pretty good, but I'm not sure that anybody else quite has this pairing. And I'll say for Ohio State and Maryland, I don't think Maryland is going to face anyone that has anything near the secondary. Obviously, Ohio State does, and there's no one that Ohio State's going to face that has this pairing on their schedule.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what we talk about a lot of times is like your offense may not scale against an elite defense or an elite team, because it's not always about the offense, right? Like, or the defense you're facing. Sometimes it's like the other offense, and Justin Fields is going to put enough pressure on Maryland that if they want to win this game, they're going to have to win a shootout. And that puts its own level of pressure on an offense, even if they're not facing an elite defense. So some of that is at play. But look, you could lose this game 52-28, and then win the rest of the way out. Like that is a possibility. We talk, and if y'all are new to this channel, we do talk about stall points a lot and scaling problems a lot, where your offense might do really well against a Minnesota, but it just completely breaks down because it needs 6.5 yards per play. And when you don't get that number, like over that number, you might be gangbusters. You might be putting up 60 points, but at 5.5 yards per play, it might completely fall off the map. And I don't think they're going to fall off the map against Ohio State. I think they're right now. There's just such a gap between the top 3 or 4 teams in the country and everybody else that I think we're going to see a team coming in with a little bit of hype. And I did love the social media game that Maryland was putting out this weekend, throwing shade at Penn State. I thought it was great. And look, take your moment and run with it. I think they're going to fall down to earth a little bit with Ohio State, but they've got enough momentum in the early season to possibly make a run after this game. So wouldn't you agree that everything we're saying here is really more good about Ohio State than it is anything bad about Maryland?
Yeah, it is. And I think, again, the secondary quality that Maryland's going to play is way beyond anything they will face in any other game this season. And a lot of the problems I foresee them having in this game will not occur at any other point. And I think Maryland is a scary, scary team for Michigan State, Indiana, Michigan, and Rutgers. Particularly like Michigan's secondary is having a lot of issues. And if Maryland's in a bowl game, I don't see their opponent being anywhere near Ohio State's level. So I think a 6-2 record is absolutely on the table for Maryland, which would be kind of shocking going into the season. But I don't see many teams able to just stop the 1-2 punch that Taulia and Rakeem brings and not horribly compromise themselves otherwise defensively.
All right, y'all, that we promised quick, and for once we actually delivered quick on this one. Let us know in the comments what you think the score is going to be in this game. And Maryland fans, tell us what we're wrong. Tell us what we're not seeing about your team. Tell us what you think your team's going to do, and if they're going to show up against Ohio State Saturday and get a win or at least get a scare. Thanks so much, y'all. Have a great week. God bless.